I'm still arranging. See, so this is the thing that I noticed while we're waiting for folks to join us that is different on mine than it is on yours.
Okay.
Did you see how yours had that little invite friend?
Yeah.
I don't have that.
What about in the top 3?
No.
The top right. The
I have nothing like that. I've tried. I've tried to do all the things. I know.
I'm sorry.
So when I get on my Facebook Live and I'm like, tell me that you're here, it's because I don't see anybody. I don't know that anybody's here, and I can't invite my friends to my Facebook Live, which I think is a little bit silly. But
when's the last time you rebooted?
Rebooted? I reboot my computer often.
Do you?
Yeah. So and that's it. Anyway, hi y'all. Welcome to Fuck Shit Up Friday. Super happy to have you here. If you're here, make sure you say hello, so that I know you're here. And we know you're here because I am thrilled today to be joined by the lovely and fabulous Melanie Childers. Thank you for being here.
Hi.
Melanie and I, hey Lil, what's happening? Yay! Lily is awesome, just for the record. So Melanie and I.
Hi, awesome Lily.
Hi, awesome Lily. If you're here, say hi. Yeah, should we get, I think I moved my chair. We're in Atlanta, Georgia. I tried.
Atlanta.
I failed. But I tried.
It was a good effort.
Thanks. We're in Atlanta together doing masterminding and raising some hell together for the next 2 days. Basically working on some social justice magic. So I was thinking that perhaps we should, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some stuff from what I learned this week while I was in DC, and maybe we can just kind of riff off of it a little bit.
Okay.
So I'm going to post some really amazing pictures, but I got to spend the week in DC with the American Women's Party Conference, and it was the Win with Women Conference. And it was fantastic. I am still completely reeling from everything that I learned because it was beautifully overwhelming, but I got to meet people like Rebecca Coakley, who is she's the head of disability advocacy for the Center for American Progress. And I got to meet Shannon Watts. Hey, Kevra. Hi, Denise. I got to meet Shannon Watts, who started Mom's Demand. And I got to meet Tarana Burke, who started Me Too, and like
fucking awesome.
I was like, I know. And I was moderating these amazing panels with these amazing badass like LGBT activists we were talking about reproductive justice and LGBT justice. It was just magic. So one of the things that came up a lot was this conversation about someone said to me, human rights are not up for debate. Right?
Ooh, I like that.
at some point we have to stop like having human rights be up for debate. And then of course, naturally, as you do, hey Max, how are you? Naturally, as you do about once a week, we have a mass shooting.
Yeah.
Which leads me to this concept of human rights are not up for debate. And yet here we are continuing to have this conversation in this country about whether or not we need gun reform. And so I was wondering if you had any thoughts or ideas about that. I know you could just go and go. I understand. I'm trying to find my notes from the lovely and fabulous Shannon Watts while we have this conversation. Awesome. But yeah.
I mean, continuing to have the conversation over whether your right to a gun is more important than my right to a life is kind of bullshit. Like, no.
No. And the rights of our kids.
Discussion.
And the rights of our kids to have a life and go to school and be safe, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So hi Hadass, how are you? Hadass just became a doctor. I'm very proud of her.
Awesome.
Yay, Hadass. Go you. Welcome to the fold. High five, Hadass. One of the things that Shannon Watts said that I thought it actually carried through all of the people that spoke at the conference was, I didn't know anything about organizing. What I really wanted was just an army of pissed off moms.
Well, you got one.
I know.
Yeah.
I thought that was so awesome because not only did she get an army of pissed off moms, but she got an army of pissed off everything. And the thing that I really want to get across on this live in particular, and also just as a point of conversation, is she really didn't know anything about organizing. So she started a Facebook page, as you do when you're older. I get told all the time by Caitlin that I'm old.
Right.
Because I'm on Facebook. But she, that so she built this army online, and of course the name of her Facebook page actually became something totally different. Hi Sonia, how are you? Became something totally different by the end of it, because she realized that she'd screwed up in the name. But one of the things that happened was that they used all their mom tools, and they went to Congress and blah, blah, blah. And you and I just had this conversation. So Melanie and I do a lot of work with women who are running for office, and they failed. So they got all these moms to march on Washington, and they did all the activism at the federal level, but they failed. And so what she said was they pivoted to the state houses. And so they started building chapters in the states to go to the state houses instead of the deal at the federal level. And you just mentioned something about this. Was it last night at dinner, today at lunch? I can't remember, but you were talking about where the power, maybe it was at breakfast this morning, about where's the power.
Right. And what I said was that so many people think that they can come out of the gate and run for Congress.
Right.
And they're like, okay, I'm going to go change the world. I'm going to run for Congress. And it's like, stop. That's too big. Start locally, build a bench. Start with run for your school board, run for your city council, run for the board of something, run for mayor, because that's where local change happens. And that's how you build your base, so that enough people know you, so that when you do run for Congress, they're like, hell yes.
Yeah, totally.
It's so much easier.
And the other thing that I love about this is that you don't necessarily have to run for office either. So even if you want, there's also ways that you can figure out how to use your voice in other political contexts, which is so awesome. One of the other things Shannon Watts said was that she became the David to the NRA's Goliath, which is why they threatened to sexually assault her and her daughters repeatedly.
Of course they did.
Yeah, they do it all the time. Like, it's a regular thing.
God.
And so the other thing, of course, is all about helping women build up their resilience for when they start a movement or they decide to run for office. And that's something that you do.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about it, when you are in the public eye, and we proved this last week with my own F Shit Up Friday, right? Like, here I was talking about the, I'm going to just have the conversations like I have in my head, and I got threatened, even though I said that was my biggest fear.
It's like the universe went, really?
Thank you for proving my point. White guy in Michigan. But the NRA threatens Shannon Watts and her daughters with physical and sexual assault all the time. And so can you think of a couple ways that women can really be resilient while they're kicking ass and taking names?
Wow.
Like 2 or 3 really
well, and her
salient
specific
points.
Circumstance is very specific and very weird.
Yeah.
Like, what a bizarre thing to say to people. Well, because you've used your voice, you deserve to get raped, or we're going to come for you, or what the fuck?
Which happens continuously to women who use their voice.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're the obvious ones of, get security, get a bodyguard, make sure that,
yeah, sure.
All of the things that you can for your own personal safety. But for your own, like, mental and emotional resilience, like, it becomes a thing where you can have someone else manage that for you. So I have a client who's kind of been through a shitstorm like this, and I was like, okay, let's get you an assistant, someone who wants to volunteer for your organization and help you manage this, so that person can filter out the death threats and the rape threats and the bullshit, so that it never even comes into your consciousness, unless it is so serious that the police need to be called or the FBI need to come in or something like that. Like, that's very specific. But that way, you create a buffer for yourself. And Shannon could absolutely do this if she hasn't. I'm assuming she has.
Yeah, she does. She has.
But another thing that you can do is just stay very, very grounded in your purpose and in who you are and what's important to you and why you're doing what you're doing. And that involves, for me, meditation and grounding techniques. So, like, closing your eyes, taking deep breaths, feeling 5 things that are touching you, so that you stay in your body and out of the sphere of the mental activity of, oh my God, what the fuck?
Right.
Because you can stay up here and spin and spin and spin.
Right.
But when you get back into your body and back in touch with who you really are and what your purpose is, you can keep going a lot easier. You sort of like filter out all of that mental nonsense that's not helpful.
That's good. I like that. I like that feel 5 things that are touching you.
That is the thing that I do when I'm really freaking out. When my brain
awesome.
is just like latched onto a story and going like a freight train, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we need to come back to reality. Where am I right now? And it's like, I'm a woman sitting in a chair, and the chair is touching me and my feet are touching the chair and one foot's touching the floor. And it just helps you reground and go, oh yeah, I'm in this body.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I have this body.
I like that.
It. I'm safe. I'm okay. I'm right here. Instead
like
of
that.
way out here.
Yeah. Kevra says to learn jujitsu, which is Kevra's jam, which is awesome.
Also,
and I
Krav Maga.
Yeah, there you go. And then two other beautiful nuggets that Shannon Watts that I want to leave everyone with were that she said, what they have to do is make us afraid of each other, which I thought was fantastic because that's how they win. Hey, Brenda, how are you? And the other is that I really want y'all to remember that she literally just was so mad after the shooting in Connecticut that she was like, I'm done. I'm mad. So she just started this Facebook group because she was just mad. And what ended up happening today is they have 5 million supporters.
Damn.
250,000 active volunteers, active on the ground, active around the country.
It's amazing.
And all because she was mad and wanted an army of pissed off moms. Listen, if you think you can't do it, you're wrong. She fucks shit up. You can fuck shit up too. And then I have to tell you the fabulous Tarana Burke. So Tarana Burke started the Me Too movement. And one of the things that she is so focused on in all of this is feeling the pain and feeling the anger and feeling all the feels when it comes to being someone who has experienced some sort of sexual harassment and sexual assault. But she said the one thing that brought her to doing her organizing work and doing the work she does around sexual violence is that she had this question about how can this body that holds all this pain also hold all this joy?
Ooh, that's interesting.
And she talks about that community problems deserve community solutions. And that when she was struggling with how to help other people in her community navigate the scenario, what she really wanted to say was that this had happened to her too, but she couldn't figure out the words to do that. And so that's where Me Too came from. And one of the things that she talked about was having your numbers. So when you're doing organizing or you're engaging the community or you're talking to elected officials, she talked about having your numbers and knowing what you're talking about. So she said that what she realized was that if she said 75% of the girls in this community are experiencing sexual violence, right?
Oh, yeah.
100% of these girls in this community live in our community. That means we have a problem in our community. And so when she said it like that, it made me realize that I always came armed with numbers. When I do my advocacy, I always come armed with some sort of data, whether it's stories or people's lived experiences or numbers, whatever that is. Sometimes it's a mishmash of both if that's going to be really effective. And I just thought, when we tell the stories or our own stories of our experiences to try and shift policy, her talking about how such high numbers of sexual violence, but also pointing out that all of these girls are from the community, I think can be a really powerful way to engage in community action. And I think a lot of times the women that we work with who are doing, who are like running for office or doing community action or doing stuff in their communities, they forget that. Don't you think they forget to kind of have the numbers and point out that these are things that actually impact your district?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it's possible. I think it's really easy to take the national view because we all want to think big and we all want to make big change. And so honing in on exactly your community and what's happening in your community might be a little bit more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or might be a thing that you forget because you're so focused on the national conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So I think that's another opportunity to like figure out what you can bring to the table and figure out how you can gather those numbers and gather those stories and gather those experiences to make a change in the community. I thought that was really amazing. And then, so she started Me Too way before Me Too ever hit the internet, right? And so what she talks about was how we had this idea that drove the work and that they knew the power of individual stories drives the work, right? And so, so she set this whole intention when she was just starting this program, which really was a community-based program to end sexual violence. And she set this intention that by next April of whatever year it was, she wanted Me Too on all the college campuses. And then something happened. And then that first 24 hours of the Me Too movement, that as we know it today, there were 12 million posts with the hashtag Me Too on Facebook in 24 hours. 12 million.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And so what Me Too has now become, according to Tarana Burke, is this global collective of survivors committed to healing. Because it didn't just go national, it went global. So her idea of setting that intention to be on all the college campuses has really blown up. Yeah. And so, anyway, that number, again, is huge. Like 12 million posts with the hashtag Me Too just on Facebook alone. That doesn't include Twitter, Instagram, and all of the social medias. And just in 24 hours means that, again, she had this vision. She didn't know how it was going to go, but she just set the intention to have the vision. And I think that that's a really critical piece to what I was hearing all week long from all of these incredible activists. Do you have any tools that you use to set intentions?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So yeah, I actually switched from goals to intentions recently.
Yeah.
Because I had such a mental block to goals that my brain just would not do that. It was like, yeah, I'm good. It's like, you write down your goals, girl. Go on. I'll see you later.
You have a goal.
That's so cute.
That's so tender.
Whereas if I changed my mindset and switched to, okay, I have the intention that, yes, my goal might be, okay, I want to grow my audience, or I want to have 5 new clients, or whatever it is. But if I change that to my intention is to reach and help change as many people as possible.
Ooh.
That shifts the energy a little bit. It shifts.
I like it.
It shifts how I show up, instead of showing up as, oh, I want 5 new clients. It's like, okay, well, that's great. That's awesome. And that's a number. And that's your brain going, okay, you can go after the thing. But when I change it to, I want to impact 5 new people this week, or impact 500 new people this week, those 5 new clients are going to come because you've shown up in a way that impacts them, changes them, and makes them go, damn, girl.
Oh, I like that. Because
you still end up getting what you want.
Right.
You've just changed your focus to, how do I help better 10 people? How do I help 10 people this week? How do I show up in such a way that 5,000 people see me this week and go, oh my God, that was amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. I love that idea of, instead of setting goals, setting intentions. Because I just feel like that I just heard that over and over again from all these, activists from all over the country that were there, that were just talking about how they really wanted to feel and how they could make the biggest impact across the board in all of these spaces. So,
well, and kind of carry that thought forward a little
bit.
It just occurred to me that goals are very masculine.
Yes.
And very ego driven, and very targeted and numbers driven, and I think that's the way that men show up. That's one way that we see it in like business books. They're all very goal driven and go get it and go get it and go get it and push and push and push and push and push. And that's not the sacred feminine way.
No.
The sacred feminine way is to, how do you show up differently? It's like, okay, how can I bring more love to this? How can I share more of myself? How can I build a better community? And your goals happen organically out of a change to intention.
Ooh, you heard that here first. That is good. Your goals happen out of intention.
Love it.
Yeah, high five to that. Yeah, can you write that down?
I'm writing that shit down.
Talking. So, write that shit down. Yes, ma'am. The other thing that I loved was we got to hear from Rebecca Coakley, who I said earlier was from the Center for American Progress, and she's in charge of their disability advocacy there. And she talked about trying to figure out what is the tipping point that makes it impossible for people with disabilities to be ignored. And a lot of times, even in social work, I have found that, and in social justice work especially, but I have really found that disability does not get addressed across movements. And, but she said, we are the literal canary in the coal mine. And she was talking about how constantly resisting makes us sicker, right? And how, especially when you have a disability or you're dealing with some illness, especially if the disability is hidden, or there is something hidden, like it's not readily apparent because you aren't a little person, or you're not blind walking with a cane, or you're not in a wheelchair, that when your disabilities are hidden, resisting can make you sicker. Yes. And so she said, she posed this question about, yes, Corey, I think I may be speaking to you in particular, like in your heart. So she talked about, what does healing look like when you're drinking from a flamethrower? Yeah. And you and I talked about the fire hose, like drinking from the fire hose, but what does healing look like when you're drinking from a flamethrower, which is really what is going on for people with disabilities in America in 2018. And, you know,
especially those hidden disabilities.
Especially those with hidden disabilities. And there are a lot of policies that are happening, that are being instituted right now that will literally cause people to die. And so one of the things that Rebecca suggested was that you stop being an ally and you start being a co-conspirator. So how can you work with people with disabilities? Yes, Corey, invisible, exactly. And so how can we start talking to people with disabilities and amplifying their voice in a way that and she also said, and this is from a policy perspective because I'm a policy wonk, right? And so she talked about how in the disability rights movement, they're actually very careful to use the term disability because it's codified in law. And so when non-disabled people try to be all progressive and inclusive by saying differently abled or the other politically correct terms, that actually goes against what people in the disability rights movement and the disability justice movement prefer, because the term disability is codified in law. And so when you come at it from a different approach, it loses the policy power that it could have through the disability, through the ADA.
I've never thought of that before.
I know. I never thought about that either.
Because the goal behind the language shift is to not
be all-encompassing and not offending anyone. But it undermines the ability to protect disability rights. Isn't that fascinating?
That's interesting.
Yeah, I just bring that up as a point of interest because I think it's fascinating. And then she also the last thing she said that I'm going to bring up here is that the new PMS is pale, male, and stale.
Ooh, damn.
Mm-hmm. So I love that. And then,
well, can I go back for a second?
Yeah, go back to anything you want.
You said, so she said, let's switch the conversation from being an ally to being a co-conspirator. And I think, because we're talking a little bit about word shifts, right? Like the sort of undercurrent here.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, the word ally feels like, yay, I'm your friend, I support you.
Yeah.
But over here,
yeah,
I'm not going to get involved.
I'm not going to get
messy. I'm just telling you that I support you.
I'm not going to get messy.
Right. But co-conspirators like, nah, bitch, you in the puddle too.
Yeah, get in the puddle. Yes. I love that.
Around this puddle together.
Yes. Let's get all dirty and mucky and messy because the resistance is messy. And maybe we can help each other deal with the flamethrower, right? Like, how can we work with other people that are also feeling the heat from this current administration, and what can we do to help sort of combat that, get in the puddle with people? Yeah, I really like that a lot. So I also got to hang out with Sarah Kensador too.
Oh, Corey says she's ready to throw down.
Corey is ready to throw down. Corey's always ready to throw down, and I like it.
Love it.
I got an email coming to her soon.
Yes, tell me all about Sarah.
Okay, Sarah Kendzior. If so, this is the thing about Sarah, that she's a badass. If y'all don't know about her, she's an anthropologist who did her PhD. She's like, I never expected my dissertation to be worth anything to anybody, but her PhD is on dictatorships in the Eastern Bloc in Russia.
Yeah, authoritarian
regimes. Yeah, all of these like horrifying governments, which apparently we're becoming one in 2018. So she never thought anybody would pay any attention to her at all. And now she's become sort of this unexpected expert because of everything that's happening in our government in 2018. And she was talking about she said, when we speak with authority, we are told we don't know what we're talking about. And this is what I loved about her. I know, Corey, damn indeed. So Sarah is talking about, she talks about how when women are online and women are in a public space, talking about what we are experts in. I'm an expert in reproductive justice. She's an expert in authoritarian regimes in the Eastern Bloc. Like, we get told constantly that we don't know what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Women have this happen all of the time when they're working in public spaces and in politics, right? Yes, make some notes. Write that shit down.
Because that's a confidence thing that I deal with.
That's the confidence thing that you deal with, right? Yeah. And she talked sort of about how we have to continue to sort of, that's an extra layer of shit that we have to get through in order to engage in social justice work and public work. And so she talked about sort of the social media mob harassment, which puts our enthusiasm for what we know on lockdown. And because we're terrified, because we're getting gaslit all the time and we're getting attacked all the time. Hey, Marianne, how are you? Women of the world unite indeed, Corey. And so Sarah Kendzior was really talking about sort of how to navigate that mob harassment and what that really looks like. And she mentioned that social media is being used currently as a political weapon. Mm-hmm. And the media barely touches on that. Hey, girl. Love your shoes, by the way, in that picture you posted, Marianne. So good. And then she got into this incredible conversation about the weaponization of social media bots and propaganda attacks. Mm-hmm. And that as women, so we're navigating the misogyny and the attacks anyway, and this notion of that when we speak with authority, we are told we don't know what we're talking about. And add on to that this additional layer of the weaponization of social media and Twitter as a direct attack against women who are speaking their truth, then women get scared off the internet, that skews the platform, and we're off. And then we're silenced again. And she was really talking about what that looks like.
So did she talk any about solutions to that?
So she did. So she talked about, so actually it ended up being Soraya Shamali who was having the conversation with Sarah. And Soraya really talked about how we need to reshape childhood norms around expression and dominance. And so for little boys in particular, their speech is honored, but when little girls speak out, their speech is shamed. And Soraya really talked about how a solution to everything that's happening is to literally reshape childhood norms about how we honor and shame expression, which I thought was genius. And then she also went on to talk about how making conscious decisions to break with convention in parenting spaces and child rearing. And then also they talked about self-censorship going hand in hand with state censorship, and how to watch yourself when you're censoring yourself. And you and I have just had this conversation. I have this conversation often online about how I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing. And this is the thing that I teach my clients and the people that I work with, like, be afraid to be imperfect. I mean, be okay with being imperfect. Don't be afraid to be imperfect. Like, know that you are going to probably screw some shit up. And it's going to be okay. And people will inevitably, especially if you're talking on a public space, like this is actually the thing that made me feel better I was like, okay, I'm not alone. There's a whole thousands and thousands and maybe millions of women who, when they speak publicly in the space, they have the same experiences, which really means we need to figure out how that state censorship and how that public shaming happens. And they also said, one of the other things she said was to hold your media accountable. So when this stuff is happening in social media, go to your local media and have them write about how it's directly impacting the women in their community.
Oh, that's an idea.
Yeah, so with local papers and local media, boost up your local media, hold your media accountable, and ask them what, and have them publicly shame people who are attacking women in social media, which I thought was really interesting, because they really talk about bolstering up your local news and talking about censorship and self-censorship as an avenue in your local news. And also the one last thing she recommended was reaching people who don't vote or lack civic education is a more productive use of our time. And that's really one of the things that I wanted to do with these Facebook Lives, was to really let people know about the issues so that they could, if anything resonated with them, or they felt like something, spoke to them, they could go and do that thing. And so that's really one of the things that I really loved from the end of that conversation was, a productive use of our time is reaching people who don't vote or lack civic education so that we can teach them what's going on. And by using like my platform or other platforms, that's what I was really hoping to do. So anyway, those were like some of my biggest takeaways from those folks. I have so many more people that were at the conference that I haven't even touched on yet, but I'm hoping to do it on Monday because I'm still absorbing. There was a whole anti-racism conversation that I'm still trying to breathe in and take in and sort of flesh out. And then we had some phenomenally remarkable conversations around LGBT justice and religion. We had a big, long talk about religion and LGBT issues and how those intersect, and also reproductive justice and religion. So I'm hoping to bring those to everyone on Monday. But is there anything you'd like to say that's coming up for you?
What came up for me while you were talking about Sarah and the being attacked online and being silenced on social media. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if she had anything to say about how to manage that personally as a woman. Did she have any resilience tips? Did she have any how to manage that? Because you're really, especially like if you're her, she doesn't have.
No, she's an anthropologist.
Right, she doesn't have a social
She works
media
at a
team.
university.
She's not a journalist. She doesn't have like the backing of anybody. She's just this girl.
And she even talked about how she fell into this very unnaturally. Like, this is the overriding thing for all of these women. They didn't step into this role. I mean, even Rebecca, who does disability rights, not one of the women I've mentioned today on this Facebook Live, like, intentionally walked into advocacy as the thing. Mm-hmm. They fell into it. Like, something called them to it. And so Sarah didn't talk about that. She didn't talk about the resiliency factor. She talked a lot about how, her and Soraya sort of talked back and forth. Hey, PJ, talked back and forth about how when they get attacked, these are some of the things that we do. And I didn't write them down, so I can't recall exactly what they are. But they more talked about how women just scatter, because at some point, and even in Shrill, I'm reading Shrill right now by Lindy West, she said the same thing. Like, what do you do? It's just coming and coming and coming. And even your bosses don't, especially if you're writing for an online platform like Jezebel or some other online platform.
Nobody's standing up for you
because they want the comments, because they want the advertisers. Right. So,
they kind of revel in that. Like, oh, you're getting attacked? Awesome. More views for us. More clicks for us.
Right. And it's
like, wait, but this is my personal life, and people are threatening my life.
And it directly impacts our mental health and what's happening. And so I think it's definitely another place where we could really peel back the layers of the onion and talk about it.
In that way.
Yeah, talk about resilience that way.
Yeah, so. Because if you want to keep going and you want your message to keep resonating and you want to keep reaching people, you have to keep talking. Yeah. You can't run, even though the trolls and the bots and the, even though people are coming for you, and you really want to because it's terrifying. Yeah. We have to keep showing up. Yeah. In order to keep working. So I really wonder if she's working with somebody, like a therapist or
I have no idea.
An assistant or somebody to help her.
We can email her. We can email her.
Email her?
Yeah.
Because I really want to know.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder the same thing about people like Amy Siskind and other
well,
people.
And Soraya and all of these people.
And people who are really showing up in the world and in ways that they didn't plan for and they don't have a team for, and it's just them showing up and post. They're the ones tweeting. Nobody's tweeting for them. They're the ones tweeting. They're the ones writing their social message.
They're writing their messages.
And
that's interesting.
How do they handle that? How do they handle the backlash?
That's a great question. That's a great question. We should explore that some more.
I want to know.
Let's do it. There's just a couple of news points I'd like to make really quick before we wrap this up. One of the news points I'd like to make is that they have the administration is instituting a domestic gag rule, which would make it so that Title X clinics and Planned Parenthood, so any community health center who receives Title X funding or any Planned Parenthood would no longer be allowed to talk about abortion as an option for an unintended pregnancy. And so that don't throw anything in this beautiful bed and breakfast. So that happened today. And that is a thing that is highly problematic for everybody in America. Hi, Heidi. So pay attention to it's called the domestic gag rule, which is really not actually about abortion at all, but really about preventing contraceptives from getting into the hands of people who want them. And as someone who has interviewed lots of women about how they even make the decision to choose contraception, that is a much more complicated conversation than people are having. And so that's something to look out for and to be aware of and to write your Congress people about and tell them you find this to be highly problematic. So that's the domestic gag rule. You just Google it. You can find all sorts of fascinating information about that. And it's really highly problematic on a number of levels. Because it's not about abortion, it's about contraception. And no matter where you fall on the abortion timeline, preventing women from having access to contraception is really problematic on a number of levels, especially if women use contraception to prevent abortion from happening. So, which is common among women, especially women in rural areas who are more religiously conservative. So there's that piece. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was, once again, we've had another school shooting here in this country, and that I would like to go back to my daughter's thoughts on this whole thing, my lovely Caitlin. And she's done, and she's tired of not feeling safe at school. And I am done and tired of having to send my kids to school and worry about whether or not they're going to come back. And so I think I've said this a million times, but I'm going to say it again. It's time, America, to have a real conversation about what this looks like. So on that very unhappy note, thanks for being here. Say a little prayer if that's what you do. Have a little meditation if that's what you do. Take a big deep breath if that's what you do. Throw a spell. Do something. Let's hope that America gets it together, shall we? I think you're all awesome. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being here, Melanie. Thank you for letting us come into your space and coming to our space. And I love y'all, and I think you're awesome. And I will see you on Monday at noon, PST. Talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks, honey.
Thank you.